Hi, my name is Dan Riley, and Eve asked me to do this presentation for the EAFA group. The title is Art Without Fear. While I introduce myself, I'll do a slideshow of some of the works that I've done. This is a sampling from over the years. I started off with watercolor for 2 years or so, and then I added acrylic, and I was doing both watercolor and acrylic for a while. Then I added pastel because pastel really is complementary to both watercolor and acrylic, and oil for that matter. I was with EAFA for about 25 years, so I've been there for quite a while. I was on the board for several years, and I was president for 1 year. I was also with the Northwest Watercolor Society for several years, where I was a signature member. I also was with the Pastel Society for a while. And I was with the Puget Sound group of Northwest artists for a while, and I was president of that group. The kind of work I do is mostly portraits and figure paintings, and I do a lot of landscape work also. I regularly join the EAFA plein air group every summer, and I find that's a really great activity. So let's talk about what causes fear in art and see what we can do about that. I know a lot of times I would start paintings and just be afraid I was going to screw this thing up. I would want to have a picture that I could frame and put up on the wall and show my friends and be proud of. But more often than not, that's not the case. More often than not, the pictures I would paint would turn out to be really a mess or ugly or just out of proportion or really bad. And that would really frustrate me. And so the fear would come from not wanting to be frustrated with the painting that I'm doing. Well, let me talk about that. Frustration is really equal to the difference between our hopes and expectations and our performance. So we hope and expect that we're going to do one kind of quality, and then the performance actually comes out a lot less than that. So we're afraid that will happen. Sometimes, for example, we'll start a painting and maybe get off to a really great start and think, boy, this is really coming along nicely. And then we start to fear that, oh, geez, I hope I don't screw it up. We'll talk about ways in which drawing and painting can be done in such a way that you'll have less fear. But first, let's talk about the best and easiest way to overcome fear in your paintings. The best way is to change your attitude. If you tone down your hopes and expectations, then you're much less likely to be fearful in your painting. Rather than think, I hope this next painting is something I can frame and hang on my wall, if you think, this is going to be a learning experience. And so you don't put pressure on yourself. You don't say, I don't care if this turns out to be really well. I want to learn something. So I'm going to try something new and change the way that I've been doing things. That's the way to move up the curve. But still, there's everybody who's a better painter than you are has been in the exact same place that you're at this time. So everybody understands where you are. So nobody thinks badly of you because you are at the beginning level or intermediate level. When you really want to be higher, they totally appreciate where you're at. And they know that if you keep working at it, that you will grow and you'll move up the curve. So on this curve I'm talking about, you go from beginner to a long time at beginner, you move to intermediate, some intermediate level, then you get to be a pretty good intermediate level painter, and gradually you become an expert painter. It depends on how much time you put in, how much canvas you've gone through, or how much drawing paper you've gone through. And then for some very few people who really dedicate themselves to painting in a big time way, might move up to the master level. But anyway, it's the time that you put in, the productive time that you put in, that's going to raise you up the curve. And so there's no sense worrying about where I am right now. It's better to say, I'm at the beginning level, and that's fine. I'm not going to be able to make really good paintings, but every time I paint, I'm going to learn something. And it's better, instead of looking to where you want to be and what expectations you have for a painting, it's much better to look back at where you were, say, 6 months ago and see, wow, I've really improved since then. And you get a much better level of self-satisfaction than comparing yourself to your friends who are higher up the curve than you, or to where you would like to be someday. That only gets you into trouble. So sit back and relax and say, I'm right here, but I'm improving, and I know I'll be moving up the curve. Besides attitude, there's other things you can do to help improve your performance and reduce your frustration. In particular, one thing is I recommend you should start doing sketches instead of painting. We'll talk about that more later. Let me show you a demonstration of what I'm talking about. This picture, by the way, I got from the website Pixabay, Pixabay.com. Pixabay has thousands of images that you could use copyright free, so it's a good resource for pictures when you don't have anything on hand. Before I start my sketch, let's take a close look at her face and see if we can establish some principles here. If we draw a line through the brows and another line through the chin, and then down through one cheek and the other, if we're looking straight at a face, most faces will find that these lines make a square. That's really a good help to us, because most paintings you should start, instead of drawing details of the face, you should start your paintings with an abstract of 4 to 7 lines at the most, to give the basic geometry of the painting, whether it's a landscape, figure, or portrait. So this square helps us with the face in getting the proportions right when we start our painting. Now notice that the center of the square is really about here, but the center of her face is over a little bit. That's because she's turned slightly to her left. But notice also that the nose is pretty much halfway between the brow and the chin. This is really helpful. That's with most people. Now you have to look at the model you're drawing particularly to see if this is true with her or him. But in most cases you'll find that the bottom of the nose is halfway between the brow and the chin. Similarly, the forehead is that same distance, the same distance from the brow to the chin, to the bottom of the nose, is the distance between the brow and the forehead. That's really helpful for us when we're establishing a face. So let me clean up this mess that I made, and we'll start to sketch. Let's put her face out of the way up here. Okay, now we're ready to go. Okay, we're ready to go here. I first like to let the canvas know who's boss. Excuse me. So we'll just loosen up a little and get some paint on the canvas. I'm primarily going to work this demo with transparent oxide red. I like to start off with just a loose warm-up. I'm not worried about making a mess because it's easy with oil and acrylic to clean up any mess you have as you go along. But at first I just like to get my arm moving and just establish, let the canvas know who's boss here. Okay, let me change brushes here. I'm going to try to establish the basic abstract pattern that we had talked about. So let me do the square. Let me start about here. That would be my brow line. And let me put the chin line about here. That establishes the size of the face I'm going to work with. And let's say we put the side of the face here. You can see that. And to make it a square, the other side would be about here. That's pretty close. Now the center of that square would be about here someplace, but we know that maybe a little more here, but we know that the center of the face is a little over from the center of the square because she's turned slightly to the left. So let's put the center line of the face along here. That's good. Now the nose will be about halfway, so let's put the nose, say, right about here. And we go up that same distance to get to the forehead, which should be right about here. So that's kind of our abstract pattern. And we can fill that out. We can say that the hairline comes this way. The cheek is about about here. So there's a drop that comes down here. And the ear is slightly below the nose. The ear comes in a little bit below the nose, about there. Something like that. Now the lower jaw, the jaw curves in from the cheek to somewhere about in here. So we have the jawline coming in here like this, somewhere. And from the jawline, it curves in somewhere in a line like this. On this side, we have a little bit of a hair curve. Then the hair comes down, something like this. And this jaw comes from the cheek. The cheek is kind of hidden past here. This line would be, comes down to about here. And then into the cheek about there. And the neck comes out in here. And on this side, it's pretty dark. It comes in, I'll say, roughly in here. Well, that kind of gives us a layout of where the head will be. The top of the head, it comes up from this forehead, somewhere along here. And maybe in here. This is just guessing. See, it's important, rather than try to be exact, to first put something down and then fix it. Let me turn this screen a little bit more that way. Okay. So then the hair goes, it starts to curve down a little bit. And then down. And finally it curves in. Not too much. About there. We're just guessing this in right now. down on this side comes a little bit like that. Roughly something like that. Okay, now as for details of the eyes, eyes are usually halfway down from the top of the head. So eyes, I would guess, are somewhere about in here. That's just a first guess. We can adjust that. Maybe that's a little bit low. So see, with a little bit of Gamsol on a cloth, we can adjust anything we want. Let me redo those eyes just a little bit higher. Yeah, I think that's better. That's looking pretty good, I think. Now the mouth, we usually know the bottom lip is halfway between the chin and the bottom of the nose. About there. Yeah, I guess I would put the bottom lip about here. And the top lip, you just have to guess. Maybe about in here. Now I notice the top lip is a lot thicker than the bottom lip. So the line between the lips is going to be closer to the bottom lip than the top lip. Okay, I think we're getting there. We've got our basic outline of the face. We can start putting in some of the shadow effects. What we're really trying to establish in the beginning isn't so much the details, you know, like the details of the mouth or the eyes or any of that. What's really important is that we try to establish shadow patterns first. So let's do that. Let's try and make a division here between shadow and light. Again, this is I'm primarily doing this with transparent oxide red. So that's kind of in shadow. This is a light shadow in here. Let me lighten that up a little. This part of the forehead up here is lighter. The eye socket will be somewhere like in here. Comes down part way on the nose. Shape something like that. On the other side, the eye socket comes over about like that. And in between we have the bridge, which I can take out with a little Gamsol. So the bridge is something like that. Between this brow and there's a shadow alongside the nose. And this side over here is all on the shadow side. Something like that gives us our shadow over here. On this lower half, the shadow is lighter than under the hair. That looks pretty good. Over here, there's alongside the nose, there's a shadow. The mouth has a shadow about in here, roughly. So that's the shadow pattern on the face, approximately. So we've approximately got the light areas and the shadow areas. And under the neck, for now, most all of this is in shadow of some sort. Huh. I think that's coming along pretty good. Let's get some of these darks in here. Under the hair, it's dark. This part of the hair is dark. It's dark alongside the face and down the neck. It's dark. There's a little dark spot up here. And this comes off. Here there's a dark spot above the ear. There's darks around the ear. And it's dark along the edge of the face. Okay, the rest of the hair is more or less a kind of an orangey color. So I just fill that in. With an orangey looking color. It leaves a little more yellow in there. I think this is looking pretty good right now. So let's, at this stage, go in and try and find some of the details. Okay, let's put the brows in. Oh, this brow comes across, oh, maybe in here, and curves down, more or less in there. And this brow more or less goes off in that direction. The eyes, well, let's take the nose. The nose is about down from the brow. So one side is about there, and the other side is about there. So the nostrils will be like there and there. The mouth upper lip. Let's try and put that in roughly. Okay. About in here. And it curves sharply. Her mouth is really pretty small, at least with the lipstick part. Comes out past the nose. On that side. And the bottom lip will be, maybe here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now the eyes will be pretty important. We established coming down from the end of the eyebrow to the corner of the eye. It's kind of a big mark. It's hard to tell exactly where the corner of that eye is. But this eye, the inside, it looks like it's about in here. We have a curve about there and about here. And the eyeball will be somewhere in there. This eye, coming down up from the eyebrow, it looks, I think about here, it looks like the corner of the eye. It's got to be level with that one. And there's an eyeball here. Now these are still pretty approximate, so we're always open to change. The idea is to get something down and then change it and improve on it. It's much better than being a detailed drawing to start with. Let me try and pick out the lighter parts of the eye so we can see where the eyeball is. I think you can see that we already have a pretty good idea of what the face looks like. And it's a pretty good likeness that we have. So now let's start improving on our shadows and light. With a sketch, what you find is that to do a whole painting, if you look at a good painter doing a painting, they capture the main part of the picture in like the first half hour of maybe a 3 or 4 hour painting, maybe even a 6 hour painting or longer than that. But they usually capture the essence of the image in like the first, it's certainly within the first hour. And that's what our sketch is trying to do. Most of the time it takes to do a full painting are spent on small details of finishing the work. The essential part is really about 20% of the work. And that's what our sketch is just the essential part. It takes a lot of experience before you can really finish a painting well. And at first, the struggle is to get the essential stuff. That's why I say it's much better to do sketches than full paintings. Because for 80% of the time it takes to do a full painting, you really aren't learning a lot. It's really just finishing touches. And as a beginner, those finishing touches are hard to figure out. You watch an experienced painter do a painting, and they spend most of the time making little tiny adjustments. And as a beginner, you say, what the heck are they doing with all that time? So it's much faster to learn if you just focus on the 20%. And secondly, when you do sketches instead of full paintings, then you're not afraid to stop and go on to the next one. If you put in a lot of effort onto a full painting, then it's really hard to get rid of it. You tend to hold on to it too long. But if you do a lot of sketches, you'll progress a lot faster. So anyway, let's take this sketch up to a proper sketch level by just putting in a little more of the shadow and light details. I've moved on a little ahead here and enhanced the shadows a little bit. Let me fix up this jawline. Jawline comes down, sort of like that. Now we're just making little touches to clean up our sketch. Again, I'm not blending very much. picking away at a few details, but we don't want to get overboard with the cleanup. Cleaning up the hair a little bit. We're almost done with this. If I keep going, I'll start getting too picky for a sketch. So I think we can call that pretty much it. This is about the level we want to carry our sketches to. Let me darken those brows a little bit. See, I'm already starting to make little minor adjustments, which is not a good thing to do, because going from a sketch to a full painting is just tons and tons and tons of these little small adjustments that you might want to make. And to an experienced artist, that's the most fun, making all the little adjustments to finish off a painting. But to a beginning artist, you're just spending too much time finishing a whole painting. That time could be much better used starting a new sketch and working on the essential part of the painting. So that's about it. This is what a sketch looks like. Well, maybe just a little more dark in here. Okay, this is what a sketch looks like. Oh, maybe just a little more adjustment here. See? You could go on like this forever, picking out little things that you could improve. Oops. We definitely need a better front top upper lip here. There. Now I screwed that up. Let me adjust that. The fun part of sketching is that you can do things and make mistakes and then work to correct the mistakes. That's the best way to learn how to paint. Try things. If you want to try some kind of a new color or scheme or something, just do it. Just try it. It's just a sketch. So you're not losing much if it doesn't work out. And with oil, acrylic, and pastel, particularly, there's no penalty for screwing things up because you can readily fix it. I think I'll put in a little bit of background just to show you that you can actually clean up. I'm going to put in a little background of turquoise. Doesn't matter what the color is particularly, except it should be cooler than the regular painting. There, that's it. That's the sketch. Next, we'll show how to start a landscape painting. So here's a comparison of the original photo and my sketch. I didn't mention before, but I changed the tilt of the head. In the original photo, her head is tilted slightly to the right, and in my sketch, I made it vertical. There's another caution that I should add, is that I started with a square between the brow, the chin, and the two sides of the face. You should be aware that often that's not a perfect square, but a rectangle. So you should take a good look at the picture or the model that you're going to draw and decide if that's going to be a square or slightly a rectangle. Other than that, this system for drawing the face has worked out really well for me, so I recommend that at least you give it a try and see how it works for you. So let's talk about landscapes. Here's a scene that I like. I came across it on, this is the Snoqualmie River inside the town of Snoqualmie, Washington. There's some things I really like about this scene. I like the way the morning light was on that tree in the center with a dark background behind it. That makes a perfect focal point. Second thing, I like the receding distance. I really enjoy doing what's called aerial perspective and showing a long-range perspective in painting, in a landscape painting. But there's a couple things here that I don't like. One of them is that I don't like that dark foreground in the lower left-hand corner. But fortunately, as the sun came around a little bit later, I took another picture. And I like this foreground a whole lot better with the sun shining on it. So I thought I would combine this foreground with the original picture. A second thing I had trouble with is that I planned to paint this on a tall and narrow canvas, and the picture is somewhat square. So in my mind's eye anyway, I thought that I would narrow the picture and have all the same elements, just kind of squinched together a little bit. So that's my basic picture. Now, we always start a painting with an abstract design, usually 4 to 7 straight lines to set the scale and the basic layout of the painting. In this case, it's a little bit more complicated, but I wanted to take this far beach down here and raise it up a little bit to make it look like the river had a little more distance. So my river, I thought I'd put up about there. Then we have a headline here, another headland here, another headland here. They're not all exactly the same. They're all a little different. And then the tree and some vegetation here. Then on the other side, I thought I would add two headlands. One kind of in here, and then Sandy Cove in here. And that's basically the layout of the sketch that I wanted to do. And of course, I put in the lighted foreground that I showed you. And finally, there's a reflection on the water. So that's the basic layout of the sketch that I wanted to paint. I don't have time in this demo to actually show you the painting of the sketch, but I can show you the sketch itself. This was the finished sketch. It had that lighted foreground and it had all the headland elements that I told you about. It's about time for me to finish this. So I'd like to thank you for watching. I'd like you to remember that if we're more accepting of where we are on the curve, it's a lot less fear. So it's good to tone down your expectations. And remember that 80% of the impact of a painting comes from about 20% of the brush strokes. So as a beginner, it's really best to focus on the 20% of the brush strokes. Get the main impact and keep working on that until you can very efficiently get the main essence of the painting in a short period of time and getting everything the right size and in the right place with no details. If you do this, then because you have a small investment of time and materials into the sketch, then there's really nothing to fear. And so instead of painting being a fearful experience, it can then be a fun experience. So have fun and enjoy your painting. So long, and I'll see you at the next EAFA meeting.